I'm Sarah Coates and this is Global Eye, your window to the world straight from Tel Aviv. Now, we're going to be travelling around the globe for the next hour together to give you every story you need to know. Well, on tonight's show, we'll examine the resurgence of ISIS possibly in Israel after last night's terror attack. Will Smith's performance at the Oscars has sparked a heated debate. And we'll take you live to war-torn Ukraine to give you the latest on the Russian invasion. But before we get into any of that, let's start right here in Israel. What's the buzz? These are today's most trending stories. Well, it seems Israel may be entering another wave of coronavirus as cases continue to trend upward once again. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, just the latest high-profile person here in the Holy Land to test positive for the virus, making the announcement a little earlier today, saying that he feels well and will continue working from home throughout the isolation period. Well, as it stands, Israel is recording around 15,000 COVID cases daily. Now, new figures are coming out of Israel's Ministry of Interior showing that over the past month since the fighting broke out in Ukraine, that more than two-thirds of the 10,000 people that have immigrated to Israel are from the war-torn country. Now, several hundred people from Ukraine are arriving daily as Israel steps up its efforts to help those fleeing, with the fighting in the former Soviet Union now going on for more than a month. Now, tell me, how do you think your brain would work in space? Well, an Israeli startup is about to be the first to test that out, with a company known as Brain Space testing its gear on astronauts in space next week during a SpaceX shuttle flight to the International Space Station. Well, 3 of the 4 astronauts on board will wear a helmet which has 460 airbrushes that connect to the scalp and perform several tasks for 20 minutes a day, where data will be uploaded to a laptop on the space station. Well, the flight is scheduled for April 3rd, with researchers to test how the microgravity environment impacts the physiological indicators in the body. All right, let's come back here to Israel following last night's shooting spree in the central city of Hadera, with the perpetrators a pair who identified with the Islamic State terror group, in this case Ibrahim and Ayman Ingabria. Now, they're cousins from the northern Arab town of el-Fahm. Now, the shooting spree was halted by the brave action of security forces who killed the terrorists, but at a heavy price: the deaths of 2 officers killed in action. Yezen Fallah, who came from Israel's Druze community, and French-born Shirel Abu Karat, both 19 years old, who were both buried today. Now, here's more from our correspondent, Mary McAuliffe.
The 2 terrorists in last night's attack in Hadera did come from this Arab city, el-Fahm. It's the largest Arab city in Israel's north in what's called the Arab Triangle, with the predominantly Arab communities. And it's located in between 2 major Jewish cities, Afula and Hadera, where that attack came place. Those 2 suspects, the terror suspects, were killed last night by Israeli forces, but there have also been a number of suspects arrested overnight by Israeli police. There were 5 suspects arrested from el-Fahm who are suspected to have some connection to the attack last night, whether they aided them in some way, also supposed to have links to the Islamic State. And it comes as Israel's launching a wave of different arrests as it tries to clamp down on this terror wave. But here in el-Fahm, we're hearing unequivocal condemnations from many of the residents, as well as the municipality, and including the mayor, who we did speak to hear what he had to say about last night's attack.
I did not know them personally, but I knew one of the fathers. I knew him as a member of the Football Association. The atmosphere today is very extremely tense. There is an uncomfortable feeling and a widespread condemnation of the attack. I, as mayor, have condemned it, but condemnations can be heard all over the city. Today, school children did not take trips outside. We asked the school administration to address the difficult incident within the schools. We also asked the imams in the mosques to convey the message of tolerance and acceptance of the other, and especially a message of partnership between us and the Jewish cities. I was surprised. This incident surprised me, all of us. My heart goes out to the families of the victims. I wish recovery to the wounded. We strive to make it good for residents and young people in particular.
This is protesters are taking a stand in the northern city of Hadera, residents demanding increased security measures from the government. Our Ellie Hockenberg was there and filed this report.
Yes, Benita, a tense day followed by a tense evening here in the northern city of Hadera, 24 hours after the fatal, horrific terror attack this city has seen. We have seen dozens of protesters gathering here right next to where the terror attack took place. But, Benita, and this is a very important, but we're not talking about residents of the city. We've been here throughout the day. They have arrived at the scene with flowers, with candles, with pictures of those who were killed in the terror event throughout the day. But this evening, we're talking mostly youngsters and right-wing activists who arrived here protesting, not against the government's policy, but rather against the government, period. Those are the same activists that we're seeing in many other rallies, again, wanting to see the Naftali Bennett-led government being toppled or changed, and seeing the right-wing or quote-unquote right-wing rule taking back the reign. And we had the chance to speak to several of the protesters this evening, as many youngsters were carrying out banners and posters with the words revenge and other slogans in this spirit. I've asked them what did they think about the condemnation, the very clear-cut condemnation of Mansour Abbas, leader of the Islamic Arab Brown Party, member of the coalition. These condemnations are being perceived by some of the Israeli public as an attempt to perhaps create a better atmosphere or potential atmosphere of coexistence. But for those who arrived here tonight, the answer to this question is very, very clear-cut. They simply do not believe him. Take a listen.
He is aligned with Hamas and transfers money to terrorists and to Hamas via organizations. We don't trust them. They are representatives of Hamas who live among us. You can see all the weapons distributed across Arab communities. One day they will revolt similarly to what happened last year.
I do not accept him. He doesn't say the same things in Arabic and in Hebrew. He knows to speak very kindly in Hebrew, but addresses his own audience completely differently. If you'll check, you'll see that that's the case. We don't trust him. We call upon the government to resign.
Yes, and we've seen similar rallies taking place in other locations throughout Israel. This while the government and the security brass are presenting new measures aimed at curbing this uptick in violence we're seeing. And all of this, Benita, before the month of Ramadan has begun, traditionally an extremely tense month that has been seeing an uptick in violent clashes throughout the years. So yes, high security alert and high emotions this evening throughout Israel. Benita.
Well, the shooting coming days after a deadly terror attack in the city of Beersheba, also committed by an Israeli citizen with ties to ISIS. Well, a short while ago, Defence Minister Benny Gantz condemned the attack.
We will get our hands on those who incite for violence. We will not be silent and initiate activities that will ensure peace and stability. We are working in a focused manner to prevent terrorist attack. No one is immune. Everyone is on our side or will enter it. Whoever tries to break us will break and fall apart. He will discover that we have not only a defensive shield, but an iron wall.
Well, it's time for a very short break, but we'll continue our coverage of the latest terror attack right here in Israel. When we come back, don't go anywhere.
Welcome to the I-24 News Desk.
Now more details on a developing story.
Breaking news at this hour.
It is history in the making.
When news breaks in the Middle East and around the world, our team of experienced journalists are here, around the clock.
To keep you up to date with the news of the day.
Where it happens, when it happens.
Stay tuned and stay informed.
Every day on the hour.
The heart of the new Middle East.
Beats on I-24 News.
Imagine being able to see into the future.
What innovations will change the world as we know it? Join us as we meet the people changing our planet and discover the inventions shaping tomorrow.
Israel Business Beat, Sundays and Wednesdays, 9:30 p.m. GMT.
Breaking news again. But there's always more to the story, especially here in the Middle East.
What's really going on in the region? Well, unless you're actually here, you can't really tell.
Join us here at the beating heart of the new Middle East
to get a true perspective on what's really going on. Welcome back. Let's go now to Dr. Fadi Ismail, who is a former senior staffer for US Congress and research fellow at the International Institute for Counterterrorism, joining me live here in studio. Dr. Ismail, thank you very much for your time this evening. Look, this is the second ISIS-inspired attack we've seen here in the region in the last week. How likely is it that we now may see more copycat attacks?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is always the big question, of course. Actually, it's the second one inside Israel, but in the region we see some sort of a revival. If you believed ever that ISIS or Daesh was dead, no, it wasn't. It was still very active all over the world, especially in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia. And now they have declared some time ago that they're going to focus on Israel. And that was probably a way for them to regain some favor within certain audiences in the Middle East that may be who may be agreeable to this kind of rhetoric. Now, when we asked about copycat, what is inherent in that question is the theory of the lone wolf, the guy or the gal who just watches things on the internet and then become inspired. Frankly, I'm one of those people who don't really believe in a lone wolf idea, because they're almost never really alone. There's always some level of interaction with like-minded people.
Backing.
Yes, there's some level of encouragement, some level of... I mean, is that really lone wolves? I mean, it is not like Ted Kaczynski in the U.S. who sent bombs to all kinds of people. You always find around these folks that there was some kind of an environment around them, some ambience that projected into them or injected into their minds the ideas, the thoughts, maybe not in an express way as giving orders to them to do something, but there's always something in the background, especially with these two that we know, at least one of them we know has been in part of ISIS outside the country. We know that they were under surveillance. Actually, two of them were under surveillance. We know that they've trained. We know that, I mean, so they are a part of something. They're more like sleeper cells. Now, were they activated from the outside, or are they self-activated?
Yeah.
Or do they have all kinds of indicators that tell them, okay, operate? We still don't know that. Well, we will know. But the point is, when we ask what is the possibility, going back to the way the question was posed, which is, are we going to see more of those? It's not really copycat. I think it's more a plan. Somebody making a decision to activate and the same somebody could make decisions to retreat.
To pull them back,
yeah. So again, personally, I don't buy into the lone wolf.
So, given what you've just said and given that there may be many more out there, what can we expect Israel's response to be, or what should it be?
Those kinds of things are always about intelligence. They're always about surveillance. They're always about special operations, special forces, a lot of work behind the scenes. But really, intelligence is paramount. We could say that a lot of it is preventive.
Yeah.
Things that we will not know about, because how would you know about things that did not happen? We don't know how many attacks did not happen, because we know that there are about 40 people with Israeli citizenship that have been out of the country in ISIS environments and came back. These are the official numbers. I think there were way many others who have been training in a variety of ways, not necessarily inside ISIS, and that are spread around as sleeper cells. What you have to do really is become serious about the threat, take it seriously. Not everything about what's happening in Temple Mount, with all due respect.
Yeah.
We have a whole country in place, and the Shin Bet and the other entities have to really look all over the place. They have to do that.
So, given that we normally see people aligning with, say, Hamas or Hezbollah, does this mean we could potentially be entering a new phase here?
It's only new in the sense that we're talking about this. I mean, inside the world of people who deal with this or talk about this or study that, it is not really new. I mean, we are aware of the fact that every fundamentalist organization and their cousin are trying to gain credibility all the time, and there's a competition between them.
Yeah.
Striking at Israelis is a great way to get credibility in that world. So every new organization, we can expect to try and do something, at least on the level of rhetoric. Again, we have to remember the first few years, ISIS did nothing with Israel, which was almost suspicious.
Yeah.
Like, of all the possibilities, you're not working on. It even created all kinds of. I like to call them conspiracy theories about who are they really, who is really operating. But now we know that probably all the conspiracy theories were nonsense. But we know where ISIS came from. We know who is there. We know them by name. We know their countries of origin. But now they have changed their focus.
Yeah.
And
the snake's rearing its head here in Israel.
Frankly, I think that we have to hit them back, not in Israel, because the command structure is not in Israel. So we have to do it overseas, wherever they're sitting, everywhere, and work with other intelligence services. The few dozens that we have here, they're not the big issue.
Dr. Fadi Ismail, it's always lovely to get your take on things. Thank you very much for coming in, and have a great night.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. All right, well, at the conclusion of the Negev Summit, which has just wrapped up, who benefits? Well, behind the scenes, energy deals have the potential to make Israel and neighbour countries rich, but could also draw them into dangerous games of natural gas politics between Russia and Europe. Well, I-24 News reporter Ariel Levin-Waldman has more on what's at stake.
Has the Negev Summit reshaped regional geopolitics? As the meetings conclude, regional partners seek to tackle the biggest issues.
This new architecture, the shared capabilities we are building, intimidates and deters our common enemies, first and foremost, Iran and its proxies.
As neighbors, and in the case of the United States, as friends, we will also work together to confront common security challenges and threats, including those from Iran and its proxies.
Although Israel has been part of this region for a very long time, and we've not known each other. So it's time to catch up, to build on a stronger relationship.
At the core of that is answering how best to use the area's natural resources.
Gas from Israel, but not only from Israel, from Egypt and from Cyprus, from the whole area, from the whole East Mediterranean triangle, where there's gas in Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt, get to Europe.
It's a big question because the United States is backing the summit to try to cut Russia out of the Western gas markets. The question is, how reasonable is that?
How to get out the supplies of gas? There are a number of sources. None of them is going to be a panacea on their own. Each one of the sources they can potentially get will represent between 10 and 30% of what they need. Israel and the Eastern Mediterranean is one of those sources.
The infrastructure only partially exists. Networks of regional pipelines either built, planned, or under construction, and the only serious processing plants to prepare it for export are in Egypt, and they won't even cover a fraction of Europe's needs.
There's infrastructure in Egypt. There's 2 liquefaction facilities that can export a total of about 17 or 18 BCM, billion cubic meters. Again, the European Union consumes 155 from Russia. These facilities can export about 18. There's infrastructure between Israel and Egypt to get Israeli gas to those facilities.
And the summit is likely to address combining that infrastructure. Can regional powers ship natural gas to Egypt or build more liquefaction facilities to process the gas, and then send enough to Europe to free them from a crippling dependency on Russia? When sanctions hit their limit, can regional forces manipulate markets to have the same effect? As the conference closes, these questions remain unresolved.
All right, so what are the other stories making news today? Let's get into it. Well, the 94th Academy Awards are well and truly going down in the history books. There were no big surprises, at least in terms of who took home trophies, but the evening's most memorable moment had nothing to do with an award. Eric Jackson has the highlights from Hollywood's biggest night.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it.
It's said to become one of the most famous or infamous moments in Oscars history. Presenter Chris Rock making a joke about Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, who has suffered from hair loss due to alopecia.
Oh, wow.
And Smith not taking that comment lightly.
Will Smith just smacked the out of me.
But that wasn't the only time Smith got to go on stage.
And the Oscar goes to
Will Smith!
Will Smith later winning Best Actor for King Richard. And the actor himself, who has grown up in a home with domestic violence, defending his actions, while also apologizing to the Academy.
Love will make you do crazy things.
All right, for more on that, I'm joined by Tony Panaccio, who is a senior counselor at Wilson Media and Stan Lee's former publicist. Tony, so great to see you. Look, there are reports now that the Academy is considering stripping Will Smith of his Oscar for this performance, let's call it, last night. What is the likelihood of that?
I think that's a leak that's strategic for the current news cycle, but in the long term, I don't think that's going to happen. There's really no code of conduct associated with being an Oscar winner. If there was, then Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey would have turned in their Oscars a long time ago.
And, you know, a lot of people here praising Will Smith for his actions, but, you know, let's look on the other side, Tony. He is being called out also for toxic masculinity. What's the take on this there in Hollywood?
Well, Hollywood seems to be very split, and it's very much in the moment. I think in the long-term view, you have to remember, Will Smith is not a guy who's known as being a diva on set. He doesn't throw things at people. He doesn't have tantrums. He's very well composed, especially for a man who every nuance of his private life is in the public eye. His marriage, his relationship with his wife, all of the issues he's had in his past, his history in Philadelphia. So I think this is one of those things where it just really hit his last nerve. Keep in mind, that was not the first joke lobbed at Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith that night. Regina Hall made a crack about their marriage, their open marriage. So it may have been bubbling not just sometime during the evening, but for so many, many months.
And, you know, let's talk about from a publicity standpoint. You know, Tony, how does this play out for Will Smith? You know, the saying goes, there's no such thing as bad publicity. You know, is that still relevant now in 2022?
Well, I think it's more relevant in 2022 than at any other time because there's so much media. People will be dissecting every frame of that footage for the next week. Will Smith is going to be in every news outlet for the next couple of weeks. And the next time he has a project coming out, he's just finishing up filming of a new one, then it will all come back again. Awareness is everything when you're trying to publicize a movie or a television show. And I don't think people are going to lack for awareness of Will Smith.
Yeah, Tony Panaccio there. It's always really good to see you. Thank you for coming on, and we'll talk another time soon. Thanks, Tony. Have a good night.
Thank you, Sarah.
Pleasure. And we're out for a short break, but when we come back, we'll bring you the very latest on the ground in Ukraine, with the Russian invasion now well past the 1 month mark. We'll have all of that and plenty more coming right up. Don't go anywhere.
These images haven't been seen in Europe for decades, but now they have become Ukraine's daily reality. As Russia wages war against the Ukraine, our correspondents are on the ground, on the streets, in cities, on the border. Ukraine under fire. Special coverage only on I-24 News.
We're on the inside of political and religious passions in Jerusalem, breaking down the financial trends shaping the global economy, giving you key context, not just headlines. With the stories from Israel that touch the U.S. and those across the region with impact far beyond its borders. Sunday to Thursday on I-24 News. Catch the rundown, where the Middle East meets the world.
Today I'm making what we call tasbih, a mix of two Israeli staple dishes, falafel and sabich. Sabich is a sandwich based on a traditional Iraqi Jewish dish made for a Shabbat breakfast. It's made of eggs and eggplant, and in the past, it was served on a plate. Israel is a melting pot of different ethnicities, which create an interesting fusion cuisine. Falafel comes from Egypt and sabich is Iraqi, but both were adopted as Israeli dishes. Sabich came much later, but falafel has been around since the early 50s. We're in Netanya, a city in central Israel. This place is called Tovas Falafel, named after my grandmother who opened it in the 50s. Back then it was just a small stand selling falafel with tahini. In the mid-90s, my older brother and I decided to embrace this heritage and to kick it up a notch. We added a couple of dishes. We make everything ourselves. The pita bread, the falafel balls, the special salads, it's all homemade. Ever since this place opened, I remembered my mother feeding the less fortunate. Sometimes people who arrive here are short of money. I can't turn my back on those hungry people, so I let them eat for free. I'm pretty sure 20% of our customers don't pay, and I'm blessed to be able to allow that. Feeding people is not about making money. There's much satisfaction in it.
Welcome back. Well, there are now just 2 weeks left until the French presidential elections, with far-right candidate Eric Zemmour attracting a massive crowd of tens of thousands of supporters in Paris on Sunday. Well, his backers waving flags, as you can see here, and some chanting "Murderer Macron," with current President Emmanuel Macron still seemingly in the front seat to win the election. Now, Zemmour, who has previously been convicted for inciting racial hatred, has seen his position in the polls go down, declaring he'd bring immigration rates to zero if he wins, adding he'll cut taxes for the working class. Well, Canadian Indigenous leaders are once again calling on the Catholic Church to apologise for its role in the abuse of children under its care between 1831 and 1996. Well, Pope Francis meeting delegates from the Inuit and Métis people in separate private meetings in Vatican City earlier today, with the Church calling it a process of healing and reconciliation. Well, the issue of child abuse by the Church within these communities came to light once again last year after the remains of 215 children were found at a former school in the Western Canadian province of British Columbia. Well, Germans who've been showing support for Russia over its invasion of Ukraine using these Z symbols may soon face consequences, with authorities in Germany saying it may soon be punishable by law. Now, the sign has been seen at rallies and plastered on cars, with a spokesperson for the Interior Ministry telling reporters the Russian attack on Ukraine is a crime, and whoever publicly approves of this war can thereby become criminally liable. All right, moving now to the latest on that story, and today marks just over a month of the fighting in Ukraine, with Russian airstrikes continuing and another round of talks set to happen in Turkey. Well, it comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that his country is ready to discuss accepting a neutral status, although any agreement would have to be put to the people of Ukraine in a referendum. Now, there's talk from within Ukraine's military that Vladimir Putin may be trying to carve Ukraine in two, like we see in North and South Korea. All right, let's now go to Lucille Mabo, who is the spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross, joining us from central Ukraine. Now, look, thank you so very much, Lucille. Firstly, look, before we get into anything, what is the situation there on the ground where you are?
Yes, hello, thank you for having me. So here, Dnipro is a city where we can see each day thousands of people arriving who are fleeing basically cities next to the front line or where hostilities are happening. So it's people who are arriving from Mariupol, from Berdyansk, who are arriving from Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, also from Kharkiv. So people who are really coming here looking for a bit more safety, others really moving further west also. So what we need to do here is, of course, help all those people coming in who are needing shelter, who are needing water, basic supplies, hygiene items. At the train station, for instance, you have people sleeping over 1 or 2 nights, and there's a center next to it where we're constantly giving the needed supplies for the people to be able to at least rest a little bit before maybe they go on or they find some other place to stay. So this is really the situation here in Dnipro, and people, of course, arrive exhausted, not always with plans. And there are about 40 centers here for displaced persons with, size is not equivalent everywhere. Sometimes it can be quite small. Sometimes there can be hundreds of persons. And of course, each day there are new people arriving, other people leaving. So it's partially a transit area for displaced persons who are really moving west to really seek shelter and be away from the hostilities that they have been undergoing for several weeks.
And, tell us about the state of these Ukrainian refugees, by both physical and psychological. How are they holding up?
Well, they're, of course, extremely tired. They have been going through shortages, living under shelters, really terrified, scarcely going out to try to find some food. So once they arrive in a safe place, some of them really stay a few days just to be able to rest. And of course, some of them also are in extreme concern for those they have left behind. So they're always a bit anxious for themselves, of course, for the relatives who are still in dangerous situations.
And, I would like to now know, Lucille, about some of the work that the Red Cross is doing on the ground. We've spoken to a lot of other aid organisations, but, what are the main things that are being treated there with you guys?
So since the escalation, we have been able to move into the country 600 tons of supplies. And this is going to be really to help people who are being displaced, but also those who are still trapped in cities where there's hostilities. So it's going to be food, it's going to be water, it's going to be hygiene items, but it's also going to be to support the hospitals. So we also have been delivering specific kits to be able, of course, to treat patients with war wounds. So it's war wounded kits, it's also first aid kits. And we have been delivering that in several cities, in Kyiv, in Odessa, in Donetsk, in Dnipro and other locations, and we're really trying to support, of course, as much as we can. The ICRC was present since 2014 in Ukraine, but of course it was really focalized in the Donbas area. With really the escalation of the conflict and the needs growing throughout the whole territory, we have relocated basically, and we have opened new offices in order to be able to cover as much possible areas where there are displaced persons, of course, but also closer also to front line. And for that also, we really need the safety guarantees from the parties to be able to access those who are really trapped in cities with fighting, where there isn't really a safe way out. So we see people taking really dangerous roads to come to safer areas. So we're really calling to the parties to, one, really respect international humanitarian law, spare civilian infrastructure, but also let us bring in much needed humanitarian assistance in the places where really the needs are growing, and we really need to urgently deliver some aid there.
Lucille, you guys are doing a really great job. Thank you for the work that you do, and I know it must be extremely difficult. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. As we mentioned, Russian and Ukrainian officials are again heading to Turkey for peace talks, with negotiations set for Tuesday. Well, this a few weeks after Turkey hosted a meeting between the two countries' foreign ministers. And by again hosting talks, Turkey is showing its strength as a mediator. Well, our senior correspondent Owen Alterman takes a look at what this could win for Turkish foreign policy.
Turkey has put itself exactly where it wants to be, right between Ukraine and Russia. The essential mediator in this seminal war of our time, hosting another round of talks between the two sides.
As I was informed, there is an opportunity and a need for a face-to-face meeting already in Turkey. This is not bad. Let's look at the results.
So how did Turkey do it? There's no shortage of claimants to the mediation throne, and some, like China, may yet overtake Turkey. But for now, a summit in, say, Jerusalem remains but an Israeli dream, while Turkey is actually bringing the two sides together.
Is the economic turmoil taking place only in Turkey? Is it taking place all over the world? The same problems are occurring all over the world, especially in Europe. How we differ from other countries is that we have turned this process into an opportunity.
Turkey seems to have a combination that China and Israel lack. Both an interest in being a mediator and also a big economy of importance to both Ukraine and Russia. Especially on Russia, Turkey's position is striking. Here, pulling into a Turkish port, a yacht owned by Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich, who's close to Russian President Vladimir Putin. And here, on the streets of Istanbul, Russian dissidents who might have different feelings about Putin.
A lot of people I know have fled the country, including many colleagues. There are only a few journalists who remain in Russia. Some of my friends went to Istanbul.
Turkey's success in its mediation drive complements a larger turn, at least for now, in Ankara's foreign policy, patching up ties with Middle Eastern countries from the UAE to Israel, coming back, at least for now, to Turkey's traditional geographical and political role, fulcrum between East and West.
All right, quick commercial break, but when we come back, we'll take you to Japan, where one of the most stunning seasons is upon us. Wait until you hear what visitors have to say about this gorgeous display. We'll have that and plenty more coming right up here on Global Eye. Don't go anywhere.
Esta semana en News 24, entrevista exclusiva al director de la Agencia Internacional de Energía Atómica, Rafael Grossi. Si Irán busca normalidad, debe ejercer la transparencia. 30 años del atentado a la Embajada de Israel en Argentina. Actos, entrevistas y homenajes, una cobertura exclusiva de News 24 en Buenos Aires. News 24, el magazine semanal en español de I24 News.
Strictly Security, your weekly look into security, intelligence, and strategic affairs. Our team brings the latest on the major international conflicts, analysis of the major security issues right here in the Middle East and around the globe. Join us for a close look at innovative military technology and get up to speed with what's happening in cyberspace. Saturdays, only on I24 News.
Welcome to the I24 News Desk.
Now more details on a developing story.
Breaking news at this hour.
It is history in the making.
When news breaks in the Middle East and around the world, our team of experienced journalists are here, around the clock.
To keep you up to date with the news of the day.
Where it happens, when it happens.
Stay tuned and stay informed.
Every day on the hour.
The heart of the new Middle East beats on I24 News.
Welcome back. Well, the war in Ukraine is having a direct impact on the United States. Gas prices are surging across the country, with food truck owners getting hit especially hard. Well, they say the weekly costs are adding up quickly, forcing them to make changes that will impact their customers' pockets. Well, CNN's Diana Gallagher reports from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Sizzling, savory, sauteed, or smashed. However you like your meal.
Do you want any jalapenos?
It's probably served somewhere on wheels.
So I got a sub, no mayo, light tomato, and a chips and salsa.
But these days, it's not cheap to eat mobile.
The prices, everything's going up. Gas is especially hitting us.
The 1-2 punch of inflation and gas prices is forcing food trucks from California to the Carolinas to tap the brakes.
Have a good day. It's very uncertain right now.
Serving up well-seasoned American fare from his B. Cook's food truck.
I don't skip on the seasoning.
Brian Anderson says the rising cost of food and supplies has already impacted his menu.
So I would pay maybe $60 for a case of salmon. Now I'm paying close to $90 for a case of salmon.
But when the price of gas started to spike last month,
I have propane, I have diesel, and regular gas.
He had to introduce a price increase of his own.
I could have managed with one or the other, but both at the same time, I'm just like, okay.
During the height of the pandemic, with restaurants closed around the country, when customers craved a chef's cooking, these gourmet gas guzzlers cashed in on changing habits. Now many are struggling to survive.
I don't know what we're going to do.
In uptown Charlotte, Felicia Reese is changing her packaging and charging for condiments now.
You need any ketchup or anything?
But says she can't stomach the cost of ingredients.
We have Gulf shrimp that we're using. It used to be like $120 a case, and now it's like $200 a case.
Inflation data show the differences are real. Food prices rose 1% in February, the largest monthly increase in nearly 2 years. But over just the past 12 months, they went up 7.9%, the biggest spike since July 1981. Gas prices shot up more than 6.5% last month and 38% in the past year. And these numbers barely scratch the surface of any impact Russia's invasion of Ukraine may have on prices in the U.S.
We were paying $60 for a tank of diesel, and now we're paying like $90. Our generator, it was about $8 to fill it up, and now it's like $30.
You just want like just a regular quarantine tea on the side?
It's been a double whammy for the Tin Kitchen and its 2 trucks.
Travel fee with something that we're charging now which is not something we used to charge.
Cara?
In business for a dozen years, Michael Terrell says he's never seen anything like this.
It just sucks. It just sucks.
Saving money by limiting where they go and what they serve.
We reduce our menu for sure. We're making sure that the spots that we're going to are either nearby or it's going to be worth our trip out there.
Permanently parking is not an option for these food truckers, but they do hope help in any form shows up.
I have to just be strong and just, fight through it. But I do wish that someone would just, put their foot down and be like, okay, hey, these guys were killing it during the pandemic. Let's do something about it. Let's keep them going. Let's, help them out a little bit.
All right, to other news now, and Peruvians are calling for their president to be impeached, taking to the streets of Lima on Sunday in support of an opposition-backed proposal to indict Pedro Castillo over corruption allegations. Demonstrators waving flags and chanting, "People demand impeachment now," with Castillo now having to present his defense before lawmakers debate and vote, while Castillo continues to deny any wrongdoing. Now, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are back in the UK after wrapping up a trip to the Bahamas, where they paid their respects to hurricane victims after the 2019 storm damaged around 75% of homes across the chain of islands, resulting in tragic loss of life. Now, the pair then visiting a local market where crowds erupted into applause when Kate tried conch pistol, a local seafood delicacy in the Bahamas, which is said to have the same effect as Viagra. All right, we're turning back into the region right here in Israel, with the Jewish state trailing well behind many Western countries when it comes to recycling and waste management. Well, only about 25% of what goes in the trash in Israel gets recycled, while the average OECD countries is around 50%. Well, government plans to raise this poor rate haven't changed much in recent years, with an Israeli NGO aiming to tackle the issue by making people think twice about what they throw away, while at the same time providing them with good quality bicycles rescued from the trash.
A lot of people come here and really don't have a clue about bicycle. We're trying to give them everything we can to make sure they feel comfortable working in this workshop. So people come here and learn, trying to do it themselves, which is something that maybe with time people are not accustomed to do anymore, but we're trying to educate people and to teach them how to do things, teach them how to do all this small and fixing like parts and bits of the bicycle.
There are good people here. It's nice to work with them, and they help me because I'm not an expert. It's also cheap, as I don't have a lot of money.
The concept basically of people coming here, they understand that they have something that is basically broken, that's not working, but instead of throwing it to the garbage, you can reuse it. So we're trying to encourage people to take this kind of concept of taking old and kind of broken parts of something and trying to fix them instead of replacing it with something new. A lot of people come here are kind of amazed that people can throw it away, like those cool bicycles. And I think it's also something that people realize that some trash for someone can be gold for someone else.
This one I found on the street, so it's great to get a new bike from scratch. I think it's also great that we can reuse our bikes and take something that used to be garbage or go to landfill and make it into something useful.
Basically, we find the materials all across the city. People basically send me texts for the location of bicycle where I can pick it up. Others are just people donating. So we go and pick them all up. So also as part of collecting bicycles, we're going to scrap yards. Sometimes people basically just throw away the bicycles and we don't really get a chance to grab them. So basically we go and look for new parts. So sometimes we can find a whole bicycle, just someone just threw it away and the scrape yard got it. So we kind of collect it and bring it back to the workshop. When we bring back some materials that we collect from all over. Basically, we go through with the volunteers through like a few basic steps. We take everything apart. It can be the bearings, it can be the brake handles, it can be the levers, it can be even the grip, it can be everything, really to the last bolt. We're trying to use as much material as we can. So we have like a group of volunteers that comes here. We put like in display a lot of the bicycle that we think can be reused, and people can basically choose depending on the size, of course, but also about the way they want to ride the bicycle.
I think we already make too much garbage as it is. We produce too much waste as it is. So why not reuse things that are great and good and in very good condition? I mean, I almost didn't have to work at all on this bicycle. They were just almost as good as new.
People can come here and understand this like concept, and then later on maybe put it into practice in their daily lives. I think for like the general population and for the better sake of the globe, trying to have less products manufactured will be only beneficial for everyone, and also like to teach people that not buying something new and just like refixing and reusing something that someone else wanted can also be great.
And we're moving to Asia, so what's the buzz? These are today's most trending stories. Tourists are once again arriving in droves in Japan, with COVID restrictions finally lifted to check out one of the most beautiful times of the year, cherry blossom season. Well, the blooms delighting crowds, people seen taking pictures amid the incredible scenery, with many calling it a blessing. Well, the flowers, known locally as sakura, reached full bloom in Tokyo just yesterday, 4 days earlier than usual. Chaotic scenes across Bangladesh, with Ramadan nearly upon us, as worshippers rush to stock up on essential goods amid a price hike. People seen chasing after a government food truck provided for low-income residents, with the steep prices being put down to the global oil crisis. Now, traditionally, fruit, which is put on the table over the Muslim holy month to break the daily fast, is always in hot demand, but this year it may be out of reach for many families, with many calling on the government to control the prices to avoid scenes like these. Well, a pair of amazing acts of do-good, one on a roadway, the other in a bar buzzing with basketball. Well, Jeremy Roth has today's Take a Look at this.
A FedEx driver is being hailed as a hero after rushing to save a child from a multi-vehicle accident in South Carolina. Damian Rose's shift was over when he spotted smoke on the road ahead.
I saw the two cars, so it's like automatically I knew it was an accident.
As soon as Rose arrived, he sprang into action.
As soon as I got there, I just heard a lot of screaming and yelling. They were saying, "Get that kid, get that kid."
Rose wasted no time pulling the little boy from the wrecked vehicle. He said he also tried to help a trapped occupant in the other vehicle, but ultimately waited for responders to arrive alongside the families, who thanked him for going above and beyond to deliver an act of true heroism right on time. For a hardworking waitstaff in this Kansas tavern, it was a generous social media star to the rescue. TikTok star Lexi Burke, known for her random acts of viral kindness, dropped a doozy on the employees of Johnny's Tavern in Lawrence.
We are going to tip the entire staff $50,000.
Burke says she used to be a server and knows how crucial gratuities can be.
Tips are very important, and even if you've got a small bill, every little bit adds up. I can pay my rent this month, which I needed to do.
With Burke's generous spreading of the wealth and the Jayhawks ascending to the Final Four, March Madness took on a whole new meaning at this Kansas sports bar. For Take a Look at This, I'm Jeremy Roth.
Well, actor Ice-T puts criminals away on Law & Order, but he was looking for some Law & Order after his latest trip to the gas station. Well, CNN's Jeannie Moose has this pumped-up story.
Put a diploma on it.
The actor Ice-T is best known for playing a tough NYPD detective who doesn't coddle perps.
I'm not going to chase you. I will shoot your ass from right here.
So it was odd to read Ice-T posting as a victim on Twitter. I was robbed at a gas station in New Jersey last night. After my hands stopped trembling, I managed to call the cops. The police asked me if I knew who did it. I said yes. It was pump number 9. We were all special victims of Ice-T's joke that went viral. LOL, I was so concerned for him, too. Damn you, Ice-T. Someone else chimed in, "Sir, can you identify the perp from these mugshots of oil company logos?" Ice-T's joke inspired memes of prices at the pump. I got robbed at Office Max yesterday. Some accused Ice-T of robbery, stealing the joke that someone else had originated online. Wouldn't it be nice if Ice-T could put gas prices on ice like he does criminals?
First, spit that lollipop out before I smack it out your mouth.
If only we could apply a little law and order to lock down prices at the pump. Jeannie Mose, CNN, New York.
And that is all for today here on Global Eye, but you can catch up on the show on Facebook or on i24news.tv. We will, of course, be seeing you again tomorrow, but for now, good night.